Classroom Management Part 1. Teacher Roles, Manner and Student Interaction. What is the role of the teacher? What is it that teachers do? What roles do teachers adopt at different stages of a lesson? And how important is the teacher in the learning process? Think deeply about this and make a note of your ideas to those questions. Pause the video and when you're ready, click to continue. ELT expert Jeremy Harmer listed 8 key roles that effective teachers take on in the classroom. Let's read and compare your ideas. The 8 roles that Harmer identifies are controller, assessor, organizer, prompter, participant, resource, tutor, and observer. When the teacher takes the role of a controller, they are controlling the way that children behave in the physical space to ensure they're safe. And teachers often control the selection, sequencing, timing, and interaction of learning experiences. But control isn't enough. At different times, teachers also need to be assessors. We're assessors when we set assessment tasks, evaluate through observation, and administer tests to our learners. Organizer. We are organizers when we set up the classroom for different tasks, when we put children into pairs or small groups, and when we make sure that learners have the materials they need. Classroom management is largely about good organization. Teachers are also prompters. Sometimes children don't have the language they need or they can't think of ideas. So we prompt children to use English in the classroom and to use new language in the tasks and during interactions. Sometimes a teacher is a participant. We participate in tasks with learners. In the young learner classroom, an example could be during a role play or an interactive storytelling or some other form of activity like drama where we need to be involved to take on a role. A teacher is also a resource. We act as a resource for our learners when we feed in new language or when we provide information learners need during classroom activities. Children come to rely on the teacher as a resource, but we also want them to move away from teacher dependency to independence from the teacher, so we need to help them find other resources, places they can go, books, websites, etc., where they can find information they need and practice language. A teacher is often a tutor. We tutor students individually. Other words for tutor could be coach or mentor. When we give feedback, advice, and suggestions to help our learners progress, we are acting as tutors. The final role that Harmer identifies is that of observer. We observe children taking part in all aspects of the lesson, from the routines and formats that we set up when they come into class or when we move from one space to another. During learning tasks, we observe children, how they interact, how they behave, how they focus. During interactions, we observe, listening for the language they use or the ideas they generate. And during freer play activities. In fact, being an observer is a key part of the assessment of young learners. It's very important to be clear about the differing roles of teachers. And when we're planning, we need to identify the role required at each stage of the lesson in order to promote effective learning, provide maximum benefit in terms of feedback and observation, and also to make sure that things run smoothly. When you're planning your lessons, make sure that you're clear on what role is required. The importance of interaction. There are many ways to learn a language in the classroom. Based on research, the Trinity Cert TESOL program emphasizes these two fundamental areas of focus. A learner-centered approach. Our lessons are based on the needs and interests of the learners. This is the starting point when we're planning and also during our classroom practice. Maximizing the meaningful use of language by learners. The majority of classroom time should be dedicated to children using English in speaking, writing, listening, and reading. And that interaction needs to be meaningful, purposeful, and have real communicative value. We can define a successful classroom experience as being rich in language and meaningful interaction. But why is meaningful interaction important for learners? And what types of interaction can you identify in the Young Learner classroom? Pause the video for a moment and make a note of your ideas to those questions. When you're ready, press play and continue watching. The following principle is from leading ELT researcher Rod Ellis. He states that the opportunity to interact in the second language, L2, is central to developing L2 proficiency. He explains, while it is useful to consider the relative contributions of input and output to acquisition, it is also important to acknowledge that both co-occur in oral interaction, and that both computational and socio-cultural theories of L2 acquisition have tended to view social interaction as the matrix in which acquisition takes place. So what does that mean for your teaching practice? It means that the roles we adopt, our actions in the classroom, and the way in which we plan and deliver lessons must be directed towards creating a learner-centered and interaction-rich learning environment. Successful language learning is driven by the skilled management of meaningful interaction, especially between learners, in the learning environment. What's more, it's only the personal attempt to communicate and the success or otherwise of that process that allows fluency to develop. So how can we skillfully manage interaction? How can we achieve an interaction-rich learning environment? What behaviors and signals can we employ to maximize meaningful interaction? One example is using eye contact. It's very simple, but when we use eye contact, we signal to learners that we want them to respond or to interact in some way. Pause the video for a moment and make a note of other ways that teachers can use skilled management to promote interaction for learning. Eye contact is one example. What others can you think of? When you're ready, click to continue. Managing interaction. Let's explore the following 5 techniques for managing interaction. Did you write them all down? Eye contact, manner, using names, voice, gesture and expression. As we explore each area, make a note of your ideas related to the following questions. Be prepared to discuss them with your group later in the group discussion. Who does the skilled management? The teacher, the students, a teaching assistant, the materials? What characterizes good management? We've looked at roles, but there are many aspects to good, effective classroom management. And why do we need it? What are the benefits of being a very skilled classroom manager? Okay, let's look at eye contact first. What is eye contact good for? Eye contact is a way of holding learners' attention. It also encourages them to contribute. When children's minds and attention has wandered off, it also helps us retrieve their attention. A quick glance, for example, can make a child realize that they need to look at you. We use eye contact when we want to check an understanding. A sweep of the room, for example. Eye contact can also indicate questioning, particularly when combined with facial expression. The second area is manner. And manner here refers to the behaviours and actions we demonstrate through our teaching. The foundation of our behaviour relates back to the roles that we identified. An effective manager helps to create a classroom environment which fosters learning through meaningful interaction and positive learning behaviours in our students. There are many sub-aspects of manner: leadership, empathy, clarity, consistency, encouragement, knowledge, approachability, organisation, and fairness. Let's look briefly at each one in turn. Leadership. Teachers need a directive manner to effectively lead the group to achieve the learning objectives. Friendly, but not friend. Having a directive manner means taking on the mantle of the manager and basically asking students directly to do things, even when they're less than willing to do them. Effective classroom managers also demonstrate empathy. Learning a language takes a great deal of time and effort, and our actions and behaviours need to acknowledge this. We also need to acknowledge any age-related factors. For example, small children, their attention span is quite short, their minds often wander off, they become bored quite quickly if the stage of learning goes on too long. Empathy is a critical aspect in understanding what our learners are going through in order to achieve the objectives that we've set. Clarity. Learners, young or old, want to know what they are doing, when to do it, with whom, for how long, and just as importantly, why. Clarity has the capacity to settle groups because learners know what is expected of them. Consistency. For example, applying classroom rules requires teachers to be consistent. The same rules should apply to everybody. Some learners, of course, may challenge our classroom rules, but consistency applied over time helps create the routines and patterns for effective classroom learning. It also builds a sense of security for small children. They understand the boundaries and they know how to work within those boundaries. Encouragement. Learning a language is a long-term activity. It's easy for learners to lose spirit from time to time, especially if they are distracted, tired, or don't feel like they are able to succeed. Our manner needs to motivate and encourage our learners to stick with the task, give it their best effort, and experience success. This isn't about empty praise. It's about encouraging them to keep going, to persevere, and to see something through to the end. Knowledge. Learners, and their parents, are more confident when their teachers demonstrate they know what they are doing and why they are doing it. We don't need to be walking grammar references or dictionaries, but we need to be knowledgeable about the learning experience and the process of learning a second or foreign language. Approachability. Can you recall a teacher who was cold or aloof? I can. I remember it created a barrier. With younger learners, an unapproachable teacher can fail to engage them or motivate them. It can hinder the development of a positive and respectful relationship. Organization. Classroom time is golden. It's in short supply. Part of an effective teacher is being organized, ensuring that you make best use of the time available, the space, the resources on hand, and the physical environment generally. It also means being highly efficient in setting up and organizing learners in different groupings and for different activities. Fairness. Teachers must treat all learners fairly. We cannot work effectively on the basis of personal likes and dislikes. Our primary concern should always be to help our learners achieve their learning objectives. Our manner has the ability to foster motivation. We all know that the motivation to participate, interact, and learn can fluctuate from day to day, class to class, month by month. The teacher's manner should help learners sustain their motivation, even when the going gets tough. Here are some ideas for motivating your learners. Make everyone feel successful. Give full recognition to their contributions, to their effort and achievement during learning activities. Personalize the learning experience. Make it relevant and enjoyable for your specific groups of learners. Make learning meaningful. Let learners relate it back to their lives and to feel real purpose and potential towards the language and the activities. Have learners interact with each other so they have the maximum amount of time available to use the language, and make sure that when they do, the use of language is meaningful and in some way authentic. Keep activities age-appropriate and varied. Younger learners have short but increasing attention spans, and they benefit from a rich variety of task types, interactions, resources such as stories and songs, changes of pace, etc. It can help to juxtapose stirring activities with settling activities. Our next area, the same as eye contact, is simple but powerful. Using names. Why does the teacher use names? Well, to show genuine personal interest, to allocate tasks, to control who responds to questions, and to affirm contributions. It can also help wandering attention. Using the learner's name will probably make them look at you. Good pronunciation of a learner's name is respectful, and it sends a message about your attention to sound and meaning in language. To remember names better, look very closely at the face. Notice any distinctive features and repeat the name. Try to associate any distinctive features with something that looks like or sounds like the name. Voice. The way a teacher uses their voice is a critical part of good teaching. Our talk is both a model and medium of communication. Teachers carefully grade their language so that it's optimized to promote language acquisition. As well as the range of language, the effective use of voice includes paying attention to the following: clarity, pitch, speed, and volume. Here are some simple delivery techniques that you can employ to make sure you're using your voice to its full potential. Fill your words with emotion. Make your delivery engaging and animated. Speak naturally and from the heart. Avoid robotic or unnatural delivery. Don't memorize your lesson plan. It will sound like you're reading a script or giving a speech. Use your voice to emphasize important points. You can use pausing combined with hand and face gestures. Grade your language. Use simplified language and in structures that are comprehensible to learners. Slow down and speak loudly. Well, loudly enough so that all learners can easily follow you and hear you clearly. Respond thoughtfully. Respond to the learner's questions and other contributions. Listen to the content, what the learner is saying, as well as the language, the words they use to say it. Sound knowledgeable and well prepared. The overall objective is to sound calm, confident, and perhaps light-hearted. Gestures and facial expressions. This is the last area that we're going to look at in this section. When we learn a language, we rely heavily on paralinguistic features of communication. We use our body language, gestures, and expressions to help make ourselves comprehensible. This may be as simple as using your hands to indicate opening a book, cupping your hand behind your ear to indicate you want them to listen, or offering a hand gesture to invite learners to contribute. Gestures and facial expressions bring meaning and normality to the learning environment. And an animated teacher is more likely to attract and retain the learner's attention. Think about the gestures and expressions you would use with a group of young learners. Pause for a moment and make a quick note of some ideas. You can discuss these in your group discussion later. When you're ready, continue to the next section. Summing up. In this section, you considered the following aspects of classroom management. We discussed the roles of the teacher, specifically the 8 roles identified by ELT expert Jeremy Harmer. We noted the importance of meaningful interaction and skillful management in order to achieve that. And we focused on some basic techniques for managing interaction. These included manner, eye contact, voice, gesture and facial expressions, and using names. Before you continue, think back. Can you complete the following key texts you learned in this section? Write your answers and then click to check. Successful language learning is driven by. And number 2, it is only in the personal attempt to. Okay, pause now, make a note, and when you're ready, click to continue and check your ideas. Okay. Successful language learning is driven by the skilled management of meaningful interaction, especially between learners in the learning environment. It's important, so remember that. Number 2, it is only the personal attempt to communicate and the success or otherwise of the process that allows fluency to develop. Did you remember that? So that's the end of this section. We covered a lot, so you might want to look back and check your notes. In the next section, you'll investigate interaction in more depth, and you'll consider ways in which you can skillfully manage each one. The ability to manage interactions will help you achieve a learner-centered classroom and provide maximum opportunities for learners to use English in meaningful communication. Spend some time reviewing your notes. Go back and check any details you want. You'll discuss what you've learned and your own ideas with your group later. And you can also discuss in more detail with your tutor in the online tutorial.